Imagine a farmer in the heart of Kansas, waking up before dawn, walking to his primary well, and flipping the switch to start the vital irrigation process for his crops. Instead of the comforting sound of rushing water, he only hears a hollow, metallic wheezing sound as the pump struggles to suck anything from the parched earth below him. This terrifying scene is not a fictional story from a movie, but a grim reality facing thousands of people across the vast high plains of the great American Midwest today. Beneath their boots lies the Ogallala Aquifer, a massive underground reservoir that currently provides approximately 30% of all groundwater used for irrigation across the entire United States territory. For many decades, we have treated this ancient resource like an infinite bank account, withdrawing billions of gallons of water without ever considering the inevitable day of total financial ruin. But the harsh truth is that we are living on borrowed time and prehistoric water that took millions of years to accumulate through slow geological processes and rare climatic events. As the water levels drop by hundreds of feet in certain counties, the silent wells serve as a haunting warning that our era of agricultural abundance is nearing its end. When this giant water bank finally goes bankrupt, the impact will trigger a global food crisis that will be felt from the streets of New York to the markets of Tokyo. We are standing on the precipice of a disaster that is invisible to the naked eye, yet its consequences will be more devastating than any storm we have ever faced. Join us as we uncover the dark secrets of the dying Ogallala and explore why the world's most productive breadbasket is rapidly turning back into a desolate, dusty wasteland. In this investigation, we will dive deep into the science of why this water is disappearing and what happens when the miracle under our feet simply vanishes forever. Stay tuned until the very end, because the solution to this crisis might be the only thing standing between our civilization and a future defined by extreme thirst and hunger. To understand how we reach this crisis, we must travel back 6 million years to an era when nature was creating its most magnificent hidden masterpiece. This subterranean ocean, known as the Ogallala, spans over 174,000 square miles, making it significantly larger than the entire country of Germany. Through countless millennia, melting glaciers and ancient river systems deposited layers of sand and gravel that acted like a massive sponge, trapping prehistoric rainwater deep underground. For ages, this vast treasure remained undisturbed, hidden safely beneath the surface, waiting for a species with the technology and the greed to finally unlock its potential. Following the end of the Second World War, the invention of powerful centrifugal pumps allowed humans to drill deep into the earth and tap into this frozen liquid time. Almost overnight, the arid and dusty landscapes of the American high plains were transformed into a vibrant green paradise that fueled the greatest agricultural boom in human history. Today, this region generates a staggering $35 billion in annual revenue, producing massive amounts of corn, wheat, and beef that feed millions of people across the globe. 8 different states, including Texas and Nebraska, became entirely dependent on this invisible miracle to maintain their economies and support their growing populations of thirsty citizens. We were taught to view this water as a renewable resource, like the sun or the wind, but this was a grand illusion that blinded us to the truth. In reality, the Ogallala is comprised of fossil water, meaning it is a non-renewable remnant of a past climate that cannot be replaced once it has been consumed. Treating this ancient aquifer like a never-ending tap is the equivalent of burning through a massive oil reserve while pretending that the tank will somehow refill itself. This grand illusion of abundance allowed us to build an entire civilization on a foundation of liquid gold that was never meant to last for more than a century. Giant irrigation circles, each spanning hundreds of acres, dot the landscape like green targets, sucking the lifeblood out of the earth at an unsustainable and terrifying rate. Because of this underground miracle, the United States became the world's most dominant agricultural exporter, but we did so by raiding a pantry that was 6 million years old. We are now realizing that the very miracle which built the modern American heartland is the same force that is currently leading us toward a total environmental collapse. The illusion of the infinite is finally shattering, as the reality of geological limits begins to bite back with a vengeance that we are completely unprepared to handle. As we peel back the layers of this deception, we find a fatal flaw in our system that has set the stage for an unprecedented water bankruptcy. How fast are we actually burning through this ancient inheritance, and why is the earth itself starting to collapse as the water disappears from beneath our feet? The most terrifying reality of the Ogallala is the astronomical gap between the water we take out and the minuscule amount that nature can actually put back in. Scientific measurements show that the natural recharge rate of this massive aquifer is a mere 0.02 inches, or 0.5 millimeters, each single year. To visualize this, imagine trying to fill a giant swimming pool with a single tiny eyedropper while a massive industrial pump is draining the water out simultaneously. We are currently withdrawing this precious liquid 10 to 50 times faster than the natural environment can replace it through the slow and tedious process of rainfall and filtration. In certain parts of Texas and Kansas, the water table has plummeted by more than 200 feet, leaving irrigation pipes hanging uselessly in the dark and dusty air. This massive drop of over 60 meters means that thousands of wells have already gone completely dry, forcing farmers to abandon fields that were once gold mines of agricultural wealth. However, the most lethal consequence of our overpumping is a geological phenomenon that scientists call sediment compaction, which permanently destroys the very structure of the aquifer. When we pump water out of the ancient silt and clay layers, the empty spaces between the grains of sand begin to collapse under the immense weight of the earth. This irreversible process destroys the aquifer's ability to store any future water, even if a massive flood were to occur in the following 100 years of our climate history. We are effectively crushing the very container that holds our survival, ensuring that once the water is gone, it can never, ever return to help our future thirsty generations. This subsidence also causes the ground itself to sink, creating massive cracks in the earth that tear through oil pipelines and fracture the vital foundations of modern interstate highways. Imagine a house whose foundation is slowly crumbling away, and you begin to see why the entire infrastructure of the American Midwest is now at severe risk of collapse. In some regions of California and the High Plains, the land has sunk by more than 30 feet, a silent indicator of the massive volume of water already lost forever. This is not a slow leak, but a catastrophic structural failure of an entire geological system that has supported the human race for more than 70 successful agricultural years. As the geological limits are reached, the ghost of a dark past begins to stir, threatening to repeat one of the greatest environmental disasters in human memory. If you think the loss of water is bad, wait until you see what happens when the very soil itself turns into a weapon of mass destruction against civilization. The stage is now set for a terrifying escalation, a sequel to a tragedy that once broke the spirit of a nation and sent millions into poverty. Are we prepared to face the ghost of the Dust Bowl, but this time on a scale that is 10 times larger and significantly more difficult to survive? When the last drops of the Ogallala vanish, the lush green circles will turn into gray circles of death, as the soil loses its vital moisture and cohesion. Without the constant irrigation from the aquifer, the microscopic bonds holding the earth together simply dissolve, turning fertile land into a fine, lethal powder waiting for the wind. We are witnessing the return of the phantom from the 1930s, the infamous Dust Bowl that once forced millions to flee their homes in total desperation. However, this modern version will be 10 times more catastrophic, because our current population is 3 times larger than it was during that dark and difficult historical decade. The United States exports massive amounts of grain to over 100 countries, meaning a collapse in the Midwest will trigger a global wave of starvation and unrest. Thousands of family-owned farms that have survived for 4 generations will face immediate bankruptcy as their land value drops to 0.0 in just one night. Rural towns that were once the heartbeat of America will become hollow shells, filled with abandoned houses and schools, buried under 3 feet of fine, choking gray dust. Global food prices will explode by 500%, making basic bread a luxury item for billions of people who currently live on the thin edge of poverty. Imagine a wall of black dust, 2 miles high, rolling across the plains at 60 miles per hour, swallowing everything in its path like a hungry, ancient monster. This fine dust will penetrate the lungs of millions of people, causing a modern plague of respiratory diseases that the healthcare system is simply not prepared to handle. Massive sand dunes will cover the interstate highways, cutting off the vital supply chains that transport essential goods across the entire continent from coast to coast. Cattle herds numbering in the millions will perish from thirst and hunger, ending the era of affordable meat and shifting the global diet toward meager survival rations. As the vegetation dies, the local temperature will rise by 10 degrees, creating a vicious heat dome that further accelerates the evaporation of any remaining surface water. We will see the largest internal migration in American history, as 40 million people from the High Plains states are forced to find new homes and water. The region once known as the breadbasket of the world will be rebranded as the Great American Desert, a silent monument to our short-sighted management of resources. Nations that rely on American grain will face political instability and revolution as their people fight for the last remaining scraps of expensive imported food items. The mental health of an entire generation will be shattered as they watch the very land that fed their ancestors turn into a toxic and swirling wasteland. If you think this sounds like a nightmare, you need to see how the government and giant corporations are currently fighting over the final few drops of water. As the water levels continue their downward spiral, a fierce legal battle is erupting between 8 different states over who truly owns the remaining drops of this ancient treasure. Governors from Colorado to Texas are now engaged in heated debates regarding strictly enforced pumping quotas that could potentially bankrupt thousands of independent farmers in just one season. Recent scientific models from Kansas State University suggest that more than 35% of the entire Ogallala area will be completely unusable for agriculture within only 30 years. Experts predict that the southern portion of the aquifer will reach a state of total depletion by the year 2050, ending a century of unprecedented and massive food production. We have spent 60 short years consuming a prehistoric inheritance that took 6 million years to accumulate, proving that our modern lifestyle is built on a very fragile foundation. The massive subsidence caused by overpumping is already cracking the foundations of luxury homes and tearing apart the multi-billion-dollar oil infrastructure that powers the entire American nation. While the government tries to implement emergency conservation measures, many critics argue that these efforts are too little and far too late to save our dying underground ocean. The disappearance of the Ogallala will force a radical shift in how we produce food, potentially lead to a future where meat and fresh vegetables are reserved for the elite. We are facing the end of the era of abundance, a time when water was taken for granted and the grocery store shelves were always filled with cheap and plentiful products. This is not just an American tragedy, but a global warning for every nation that relies on fossil groundwater to sustain a population that is growing far too fast. Will we find the collective courage to change our consumption habits? Or will we wait until the very last drop is gone before we finally admit our fatal mistakes? The miracle under our feet is vanishing forever, and the question remains, can the world's breadbasket survive when its heart stops beating and its blood simply runs out? Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe that modern technology can save us from this water bankruptcy? Or is the era of global abundance truly over? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to help us bring more critical investigations about our planet's most precious and hidden resources. Thank you for watching until the end, because your awareness is the first step toward preventing a future where the entire world is defined by thirst and hunger.